Somewhere in Ohio, a woman opens her electricity bill and it is $16 higher than last month. She didn't buy anything. She didn't turn anything on. It's the same house it was in January, with the same lights and the same refrigerator and the same woman standing in it. 400 miles away, a building with no windows is pulling more electricity in an hour than her entire street uses in a week. Nobody who works in that building will ever hear her name. And here's the part that should bother you. That $16 is not going to the people who run that building. It's not going to the company that owns the computers inside it. And it is definitely not going to whoever typed the prompt. 7 different parties are going to touch her $16 before it stops moving. And the one that keeps the most never generated a single watt of anything. So let's follow the wire, because your electricity bill isn't a bill. Not really. A bill is what you get when you buy a thing. You use it, they count it, you pay for what you used. Simple. Honest. That's a bill. What arrives in your mailbox is something else. It's an invoice for a construction project you never approved, on a timeline you didn't set, with a profit margin that was negotiated in a room you have never been inside. Most of what you pay has almost nothing to do with electricity. It's poles, wires, substations, power plants held on standby in case somebody, somewhere, needs them. And, this is the important one, a guaranteed profit that somebody earns simply for having built all of it. That distinction is the entire video. The electricity is the excuse. The infrastructure is the business. Now, follow the wire out of her wall. Okay, level 1. You. You are the beginning of the wire, and you have no idea you're in a transaction. You didn't sign a contract with a data center. You never voted on one. In most states, you can't switch away from the utility that serves your address even if you want to. There's one wire into your house and one company that owns it. So when the cost of the system goes up, there is no negotiation. There's a filing, a hearing you didn't know about, an approval, and then a number on an envelope. In Ohio, that number went up about $16 a month. In Western Maryland, $18. For Pepco customers in Washington, about $21. You are not a customer at this level. You are the collection point. Everything downstream is designed around the assumption that you will pay, because structurally, you have to. Level 2. The utility. Follow the wire out of the meter, and the first thing it hits is your utility. And here is where almost everybody misunderstands how this works. Your utility does not get rich selling you electricity. It's a regulated monopoly. A commission tells it what it's allowed to earn. And what it's allowed to earn is a percentage return on the capital it has invested. The poles, the wires, the substations. That's called the rate base, and the approved profit on it averages around 10% nationally. Sit with the incentive that creates. The utility doesn't make more money when you use more electricity. It makes more money when it builds more things. So a wave of data centers arriving and demanding enormous new infrastructure is not a crisis for the utility. Read the earnings calls. It is the single best thing that has happened to the industry in 40 years. The utility isn't selling you power at this level. It's selling you construction. And it has been guaranteed a profit on it before the first hole is dug. Level 3. The capacity market. Now the wire leaves your state. Most of the eastern United States buys electricity through a grid operator called PJM. 13 states, 65 million people. And once a year, PJM runs an auction, not for electricity, but for the promise of electricity. Generators get paid just to be available on the worst day of the year. That promise is priced per megawatt day. Watch what it did. $28.92 in the 2024 to 25 auction, $329.17 for 2026 to 27, about 11 times higher in 2 years. And PJM's own market monitor attributed 63% of one of those increases to data centers. Roughly $9.3 billion that gets recovered from customers across all 13 states in higher rates. Not from the data centers, from everyone on the wire.
At this level, nobody sold you anything at all. You are paying for the possibility that a building 400 miles away might need power on a hot afternoon in August.
Level 4. The transmission owner. Follow the wire further and it becomes a very large wire. Somebody has to build the high-voltage lines that carry all this. Those companies are also guaranteed a return. One Wisconsin transmission operator was collecting 10.48%, locked in, paid by electricity customers for decades. And here's the structural problem. Analysts have argued that authorized returns across the industry sit meaningfully above what the capital actually costs, an excess estimated at roughly $50 billion a year, about $300 per household. That's before any of this. That's the baseline. The AI build-out is being loaded on top of a system that already over-earns by design. You are not paying for a wire at this level. You are paying rent on somebody's balance sheet, and the lease runs 30 years. Now, level 5 is where this stops being about the grid and starts being about who was never going to pay in the first place. And I want to show you exactly how that... Actually, before that. If you've made it this far, you're the reason this channel exists. Subscribe, because the next one follows the money on who gets paid when you buy a video game. And I promise you, it isn't the studio. Okay, level 5. Who doesn't pay? The building at the end of the wire. Data centers now consume about 6% of all electricity in the United States. Projections have that reaching roughly 12% by 2030 and around 20% by 2035. 1/5 of everything the country generates. You'd assume they pay 1/5 of the bill. They do not pay it the way you pay it. Large industrial loads negotiate. They sign special contracts, they get volume rates, and they arrive in towns holding a very specific offer: jobs and tax revenue in exchange for abatements, exemptions, and infrastructure the public helps fund. The woman in Ohio had no negotiating position. The data center had several and used all of them. Same wire, same grid, same electrons. She pays retail on a rate she cannot refuse. They paid wholesale on a rate they helped write. Level 6. The hyperscaler. Follow the wire past the building and it stops being a wire and starts being a lease. The company that runs the data center often isn't the company using it. The compute gets rented to a handful of very large technology companies, and for them, electricity is not a crisis. It's a line item inside a much bigger number they've already told shareholders about. When a hyperscaler announces $60 billion in capital spending, the market doesn't hear cost. The market hears commitment. The stock frequently goes up. That's the moment the money changes character. Everything before this was somebody paying. From here on, it's somebody investing. And investing gets rewarded. At this level, your $16 stops being a cost and becomes a growth story. Nobody at this altitude experiences it as a bill. Level 7. The chipmaker. And then the wire ends. All of it. The substations, the transmission lines, the auctions, the abatements, the $16. It terminates in a rack of processors, sold by a very small number of companies. NVIDIA's gross margin for fiscal 2026 came in around 71%, and in the fourth quarter, it hit 75%. 3/4 of the revenue on those chips is gross profit. Now hold two facts next to each other. Her power bill went up $16 because a building needs electricity. That building needs electricity because it is cooling chips. And the company that sold the chips books a 75% margin on them, while the electricity that makes them useful appears nowhere on its income statement at all. At the top of the wire, the electricity isn't even a cost. It's someone else's problem, and it's been someone else's problem the entire way down. Except I told you 7, and I lied slightly, because there's an 8th, and it's the one that matters. Go back to level 2. The utility earns a regulated return of around 10% on everything it builds. That return doesn't stay at the utility. It's a return to shareholders, which means the guaranteed profit on the poles and the wires and the substations flows to whoever owns the stock: pension funds, index funds, institutions. So here's the uncomfortable symmetry. The woman in Ohio is paying an extra $16 a month into a system engineered to produce a stable, regulated, essentially guaranteed return for people who will never see her bill and were never asked to approve it either. She isn't a customer of this system. She's the yield. And this doesn't stay on your power bill, because almost nothing does. Electricity is an input to everything. The grocery store runs refrigeration 24 hours a day. Cold storage, water treatment, manufacturing, hospitals, none of them absorb a rate increase quietly. It moves into prices. It also moves into politics. 13 states just watched consumer bills climb because of demand that arrived from outside their borders. That's a fight, and it's starting. And the projections say 6% becomes 12 by 2030 and 20 by 2035. Whatever you're paying for this now is the smallest it will ever be. So back to the kitchen in Ohio. She's holding a piece of paper that says she owes $16 more, and there is no line on it that says AI. There's no line that says data center. There's no line that says capacity auction or rate base or guaranteed return on equity. That's not an accident. A bill that explained itself would be a bill people could argue with. Here's what I'd leave you with. You will never win an argument about your electricity bill by using less electricity, because most of what you're paying isn't electricity. It's a construction project with a guaranteed margin. And the only people who get to argue about it are the ones already inside the room. The least you can do is know the room exists. That's why this channel is here. I follow the money through systems that were built to be too boring to follow. If that's useful to you, subscribe, because the next one is about who actually gets paid when you buy an $80 video game. And the answer made me genuinely angry. See you in the next one.